today we're taking a look at a recent release that actually got my attention by Spinnaker. Today we're going to take a look at the Spinnaker Croft, the Midsize Limited Edition. So I've spoken about this before, about my feelings towards Spinnaker. I think they make some great watches, some great value, but my issue with them is that they simply release too many of them, and it's hard to really keep up with all of the releases. And this is one of those that I didn't know was released until afterwards, and I managed to get my hands on one simply because it has a couple of things that caught my attention. So first of all, here's the packaging. It comes with this outer sleeve that actually, I've owned a lot of Spinnaker watches and this is new to me. I believe they are changing up the packaging, so that's a nice touch. Here it is. Here it is. So why am I specifically interested in this one? First of all, obviously, is the skeletonized view here. Spinnaker, to me, this might be one of the first skeleton watches they make. I'm normally not a fan of them, but this one looked interesting enough to give it a shot. Here it is. The other thing that really caught my attention was really the size. If Spinnaker, the brand, has a fault, really, it's that I think a lot of their watches are simply too big. They tend to range more in the 44mm range. And I've actually owned a Croft before, which is this model, and it was in 40mm too, and it was a good value, it was a good everything. It was just simply too big. And when they released this mid-size, I thought, I just have to have it. And just my initial impressions are actually quite positive. So let's take a look a little bit more at this dial and the specifications. So whereas the other Croft, the original one, was at 44mm, this is toned down to 40mm diameter. Very wearable size for even me with the small wrist. It's a little bit on the chubby side at 14mm, but again, for a diver, that's not really surprising. Exhibition case back here. I believe this is marketed as a limited edition. I think they have 1,000 of these out, so it shouldn't be too difficult to grab one. The lug width is 20mm. You can see it there on the dial at the bottom, limited edition. It uses an NH70 movement, which again is just workhorse, nothing horologically significant, but it's just a strong mechanical movement that is pretty much as steady and as strong as they come. Just love that dial. They did a great job with this. And one of the touches that I really like is that the indices are actually very visible. They're running around like on the chapter ring, and they're kind of popping out just a little bit. That's a nice touch. The hands also have that skeleton design to them. Super cool touch. I went with the brown variant simply because I don't have a lot of brown watches. And the bezel there, you can see it. But you can see the movement there, the wheel spinning. Really nice design in my opinion, really nice touch. Exhibition case back. It has a water resistance of 150 meters, so that's pretty much as much as I think most of us will need, with the screw down crown here. Screw it out, and of course you can also hand wind it if needed. So again, I think this is a bread and butter of Spinnaker. Some nice designs, some workhorse movements. I think you can get this for around $300, $350, which is a little pricey for their usual range. Usually you can get them for around $200, $250, but being a limited edition, and I'd be willing to wager that they went limited edition because they didn't know how the market would be for skeletonized watches. But in terms of that, I do think this is one of the nicer ones I've seen. I don't think usually you do compromise legibility when you go skeleton, but here, the way the indices are laid out, I don't think you really face that. The second hand has a nice color accent, so you won't lose that either. Overall, I think this is really just very well executed. So I brought out a couple of other divers to really show the sizes. And here it is next to the turtle. the Seiko turtle, and obviously you can see there how the turtle just blows it out of the water size wise. And I wanted to show this one just because it would show how the wearability of the Spinnaker here. Great size, similar thickness. Obviously the Seiko turtle here runs you closer to $400, $450. But they're very similar specifications in terms of material and movement. With the Spinnaker here, you do get an AR coated sapphire crystal, which you can kind of expect at this price range, but still worth noting. I also brought out the Samurai, which is another very popular watch that a lot of you might own to see the size, and again, it blows it out of the water size wise. What I'm really trying to show here is the wearability of the Spinnaker. At 40 millimeters, that's just a fantastic size. The Samurai there does look quite a bit thicker. But I would put this pretty much head to head with any Seiko diver in similar price ranges, just with a very unique look here. See the sapphire crystal right here. Signed crown. I will say the leather strap is not the greatest. I haven't worn it, but it does feel a little flimsy. It feels really stiff. While not being too, I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. I'll definitely be switching that out. But the other reason why I really was drawn to this watch is because of the lume. So let's go ahead and check out the lume and compare it to the other watches. So of course, the disclaimer I always give, we're not in complete darkness, just because when you are in complete darkness, you won't see the strength of the lume. So we're actually in quite a bit of light, so we'll see how the lume holds up. So of course, like I said, one of the reasons I got this was because of the lume, mainly because I'm a big sucker for lume bezels. Here it is. And really, it's extremely surprising how strong the lume is, and extremely surprising how even it is. I have owned some lumed bezels before, and they usually tend to be kind of uneven compared to the lume of that of the hands. But like I said, I absolutely love the indices that are popping out just a little bit and makes legibility not really an issue, which is usually the biggest enemy of skeleton watches. So let's go ahead and compare to the Seiko, which of course we all know Seiko is pretty much king in lume. I mean, if you really put them next to each other, you don't get an enormous difference. I would say the Seiko is a little bit stronger, but not by much, which again, I'm really surprised. Just take a look at it again, just because of, honestly, this is the first time I'm taking a close look at it, and the detail of it, it's absolutely perfect. Really nice touch. And see, if you were to diminish the lume a little bit, you would lose legibility, but just because it's so strong, everything behind the dial is absolutely lost in darkness. There it is. But the lume itself just makes everything better. And of course, it's compared to the Samurai here. Similar lume obviously as a turtle, but as you can see, there's an out. It's not significantly stronger than the Spinnaker, which when you're comparing to Seiko, that's high praise. So overall, I'm extremely happy with this one. I'm really impressed again by the lume. I keep saying that, but it really is impressive. Great watch, great size. And if you're a fan of the brand, I think this is one it's definitely worth getting, especially if you're like me with smaller wrist. It's definitely worth getting. Let's throw this on the wrist and see how that wears. On the wrist, it does wear as the dimensions would suggest. It's definitely small. Keep in mind, I have a very small wrist, around 6.5 inches. So this does wear perfectly on my small wrist. The small lugs does keep it wearing small. It's a little bit on the chubby side, but that's not really an issue. Overall, I'm pretty impressed by this. we'll see how it stays in my collection, and overall I do think I can recommend this